Hi guys, I hope you can hear me. I know there's some sanding going on in my garage, but um, we'll just ignore that. Today I'm going to read to you from Old Wolf. I'm going to start at chapter 15. When we left off, Neshaba was headed back to get the pack so that they could hunt the elk that Merla, the raven, had found for Neshaba. But this, as we know, it's a parallel plot, so this chapter 15 is actually going to start back with the family and with Casey. For Casey, the school day dragged. True, Fridays always seemed to last forever, with kids eager and impatient for the weekend. Fortunately, Friday recess was extra long. The school seemed to understand that kids need to work off restless energy running and playing hard, not sitting. Casey spent most of his time daydreaming about the big gift he was promised he would receive at dinner. He wanted so many things: the newest Madden football game, a new computer, airline tickets to visit his grandparents in Chicago, a bow and arrow set, cross-country skis, a dog. What would he name a dog? He almost regretted that he and his mom had planned a party for Saturday afternoon when he and a bunch of his friends, taken by his mom after her morning work, were going to a movie in Lockport, some 17 miles on. At least he would have the morning to mess around with whatever the present was. The picture of that zebra feet up, which he had killed that morning, came into his mind, and the raven that had gotten away. What, he wondered, would he kill when he got home? He could hardly wait. Remember, that was in his video game. Chapter 16. As Neshaba hurried back to the den, he realized he should have investigated the elk for himself, considered the land to work out a hunting strategy, and decided which elk would be the easiest to take down. At least he should have counted them. Yes, his wolves would follow him. However, with Garby's challenge, they would be watching and judging everything he did. He must be successful. The raven is right, he thought. Elk cows often leave their calves alone. With any luck, the calves will not go far away. Neshaba tried to run faster. He found it difficult. Twice he had to stop and rest. But the more he rested, the more anxious he became. He must not let those elk get away. Chapter 17. As the wolf moved out of the valley, the hurt in his front paw worsened. Working hard to ignore it, he maintained a steady pace, the better to save his energy. When he came within a mile of the pack den, he stopped and rested. He did not want to appear tired when he arrived. It was cooler at the higher altitude, a half-mile from the den. Tall lodge pine and spruce crowded the ground and shaded the dark green and fragrant air. The rocky earth was frozen in spots, often crusty with a brittle covering of dead leaves. Patches of dirty snow, dotted with pine needles, lay at random. Nothing was growing here yet. After sitting a while to regain some strength, his right front leg elevated to ease the pain, Neshaba lifted his head, filled his lungs with air, closed his eyes, pointed his muzzle up, and made an O of his mouth. Then he howled, a long, deep, wavering wail that lasted a good 10 seconds. It rose and fell like a wave rolling across the sea. He was telling his pack of his return. After a brief pause, Neshaba repeated the call once and once again. Before he was done, there were answering calls, 5 distinctive howls, each one in harmony with his voice. His mate, Tanagan, had a higher-pitched call, full of excitement. Then came Garby's loud and full of bluster. Nikito sang out too, tentative at first, then stronger as the young wolf asserted himself. Pildown added his voice, sweet and melodic. Finally, Debalt, lowest in pack ranking. His short, almost barking howls sounded as if he were knocking on a door, asking to be let inside. The soft-eared pups were too young to howl, but Neshaba had no doubt they heard his howls and were letting loose with excited squeaks and whines. He gave a growl of satisfaction and resumed running faster now that he was close to home, paying no attention to his aching foot. Chapter 18. Casey's school day was over at 3. The students at the school were only 87, either walked were picked up in cars or were taken home by a school bus. But the bus did not go as far north as Casey's house. Instead, Casey walked the short distance to the Clarksville General Store where his mom worked. The store was a long one-storied wooden building with a central doorway. Two handwritten signs could be seen in the window. One read "Open," the other "Hunter's Welcome Here." At one end of the building, groceries, meat, and vegetables were sold. An ice cream counter did well during the summer tourist months. At the opposite end was a liquor store. Between this and the general store was the Clarksville post office. Though the post office was only a small room plus an adjacent hall, it served as North Rickles County. Since there was no delivery north of the post office, people came in for mail, news, and talk. Next to the post office, which consisted of a large open counter, a cluttered workplace with desks, scales, postal sack racks, cash drawer, and safe, plus stamp drawers, was a wall of postal boxes. You opened your small box door with a brass key. There were also a few tables and chairs, plus a couple of shelves where you could exchange books, mostly paperbacks. Another wall was covered with local notices. There was a sign that read, "Clarksville Post Office, established 1923. "Hi, Mom," Casey called as he approached. His mother looked up from her desk and smiled. "How's my teenager?" She was wearing her blue post office shirt, on which she had embroidered "Postmaster, Clarksville," in red over her heart. "I'm good. Go find yourself a snack. I know it's your birthday, but you might as well get some homework done. You've got a busy weekend," she added with another smile. Casey replied with his own knowing grin. Chapter 19. When Neshaba reached the den, the wolves came forward to greet him in ranking order: Tanagan, Garby, Nikito, Pildown, and finally Debalt. They approached with tails respectfully low, then pushed their bodies against him with head and muzzle rubbing as well as licking. While Garby avoided looking at Neshaba directly, Pildown dropped to the ground and whimpered. Debalt, as always, hung back, unsure he would be welcome. The two pups burst from the den. They yipped and yapped as they tumbled clumsily toward their father, tails wagging furiously. Though utterly disrespectful, Neshaba met their welcome with pleasure and no discipline, nuzzled them repeatedly, licked their faces, and nipped their soft ears. They responded by mouthing his jaw again, begging for meat, then plopped down, rolled on their backs, paws up, bellies exposed, all the while squealing with joy. Tanagan looked on with satisfaction. The wolves waited expectantly. Neshaba, wanting them to wait on him, took so much time that an impatient Garby burst out, "Well, did you find anything?" Neshaba looked at him disdainfully. "Of course," he said. "Where? What?" asked Nikito with his usual enthusiasm. Neshaba said, "A small herd of elk." "How many?" demanded Garby. "How far?" Nikita asked. Neshaba chose to answer Nikita's question. "Down valley, about 8 miles. 8? said Tanagan. "It will be dark before we reach them," said Garby. "The moon will be good enough," Neshaba replied. "If the weather holds," said Garby. Neshaba ignored the challenge in the young wolf's remark. "We'll go now, Debalt. You stay with the pups." Proud to be given an important task, but disappointed not to be included in the hunt, Debalt lowered his head in obedience. "Garby," Neshaba commanded. Garby approached cautiously. Neshaba lifted his left paw in a sign of his authority, touched Garby's back. "Follow my lead," said the old wolf. The young wolf kept his head down but made no response. Neshaba turned, despite his fatigue, began to run back the way he had come. Tanagan, the female leader, followed right behind. Garby came next. When the ever-eager Nikita drew too close to him, Garby looked back, showed his teeth, and snarled. Nikita fell back a step. Hungry and excited, the pack ran in a line. Neshaba had to work hard to keep the lead. Chapter 20. Casey dumped his backpack on a chair and went to get a carton of milk from the fridge, as well as a package of small chocolate-covered donuts from the grocery. "Happy birthday, Case," called Mrs. Pardella, Mr. Pardella, the tall, skinny man with a chin whisker with chin whiskers who tended the store's old-fashioned mechanical registry. Everybody knew everybody in Clarksville. Thanks. Teenager, huh? Guess. Here comes trouble. Casey laughed and returned to the table. When he got there, a man was standing at the post office counter talking to his mother while he mailed a small package. Casey recognized the man as Mr. Souza, an old white-haired guy who had come to retire in the valley from some East Coast city. Casey did not know much about him except that he was a birder, someone who roamed the area looking for birds, taking pictures of them with a huge lensed camera. Once Mr. Souza had come by their house asking permission to cross their land and go into the woods to look for birds. Since receiving an okay, he had often entered the forest from their place. Casey was opening the donut package when he heard his mother say, "It can't be a wolf, Kim. Must have been a large dog." Casey looked up. "That's what I thought at first," said Mr. Souza, "but the paw prints were really big. I should have taken a picture. Back beyond your place, a half-mile or so. Couple of weeks ago. I could have sworn they were wolf prints." "I doubt it," Bess said. "Trust me, folks don't like wolves. Scared of them. If there was one that close, people would talk. Or worse." "Well, I'm no expert, that's for sure," Mr. Souza said. "Did see lots of cason fishes back there. Grosbeaks too. Pretty birds, oh yes, and some ravens." Casey's mother told him the cost of his postage, with priority mail, she said. It should get to Boston in 2 or 3 days, the latest. "Thanks so much," said Mr. Souza. He passed Casey and he asked, "How's it going, Case?" But he did not stop. "Fine." Casey wanted to ask him about the paw prints. By the time he got up his nerve to do it and hurried out of the store, Mr. Souza was in his pickup truck and pulling out of the parking lot. But it had begun to snow. Casey did not care. Spring snow never lasted long. It might even turn to rain. All he could think was that wolves often appeared in his hunting game. It would be cool to see a real one. So, in this chapter, we have some foreshadowing that is connecting those two plots that are going on. So for the first time, we've heard humans make reference to the fact that there are wolves in the valley as well. So stay tuned. Hope you guys are all well. I'll see you soon.